see. Hello, hello. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Maybe too loud there. All right. Um, I'm hoping to talk to you about a different kind of invasive. This is an invasive. Is that? I can't say it's weedy because it's an insect. So it's an insecty insect. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna talk about the gold spotted oak borer, and I want to know first who here has heard of it or is know what I'm talking about. Ooh, okay, okay. So, um, I see a lot of people that have experience or at least know about it. So let's get to it, and hopefully, for those of you who don't have much experience, we're gonna get everyone sort of on the same page. So I wanted to start about, why oaks, and we talked about having native plants and native trees and how good it is for our landscapes, and oaks are the, main character. If you were making a movie about a Southern California tree, it would be an oak, right? They're these amazing trees. They grow super tall, super wide. They do so much for our environment, for our ecology. Even if they're just in our garden, they support so much biodiversity that they're actually they make the most biodiverse ecosystem in California, oak woodlands. So they are amazing trees. Yes. Too loud. Let's see here. Better? Okay, sorry. Thank you. All right. So, and we know they also have a lot of cultural importance. That every part of the oak has some kind of use that have been used by Native Americans, and they're still using them. So we really would like to protect them. Yet this is what we have been seeing, especially here in San Diego County. We see, lots of oaks dying or declining. And one of the main causes of this, especially in this county, is the gold spotted oak borer. Hence, no surprise that most of you know about it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, who is this gold spotted oak borer? So, is this little beetle? They are about a little bit less than an inch long. They're native to Arizona, Southwest Arizona. So they are native to the United States, but not native to California, which is very important. And as the same sort of principles that work for wheat that Chris was talking about works for other organisms. So these beetles are here in Arizona. They might have natural enemies. They might have, some parasitoid wasps that are attacking them or their eggs. The oaks that they infest in Arizona are more adapted to them, and they don't suffer so much from their attack. But here in California, they left behind all their natural enemies, and also they are attacking different kinds of oaks, which are more susceptible. So they're causing more damage here. So it's called gold spotted oak borer because it has this beautiful spots on the back, on the wings. It's from the jewel beetle family, so it's kind of iridescent, kind of shiny. It's very beautiful. Um, Things can be beautiful and still invasive. And what they do is when they attack the oak, they have this. This is the little larvae that comes out of the egg, and they just go into the bark and basically attack all the vascular system of the tree. Here's a tiny condensed version of tree physiology lecture. So for a tree, we start, if we have a cut of the stem, we start with an outer bark, which is kind of the parts that will protect the tree from the environment. Yes.
Yeah. Are there any natural predators for that?
In California? Yeah. No. Well, there's a few that we've found, and none of them are native though, and none of them are working as biocontrol yet. Maybe that's coming. Yes.
Yeah, you just said that they got in, but I wasn't clear whether there needs to be an injury to the bark or they're able to get through on their own.
They get on it on their own, and I'm gonna go just hold on one or two slides, and I'm gonna show you the life cycle, and you'll see how that works. But they actually, this teeny tiny larvae hatches on the bark and starts burrowing into the bark. And what I wanted to show now is how a tree works. So you have the outer bark, then you have the phloem. The phloem will be the vascular system that moves sugars from the leaves to the rest of the tree. And then you have the cambium. The cambium is the layer where the tree grows, right? It makes more phloem, it makes more xylem. So that's how the tree gets bigger. And then you have the xylem inside. The xylem is the vascular system that moves water from the roots to the rest of the tree. And if you go a little bit deeper, you have what's the dead xylem that consists of the hardwood, that's non-living tissue. What GSOB does is attacks this area. So it attacks the cambium, and this dark zones, these are affected areas of the cambium. This is kind of dead tissue. So it affects this, where the tree grows, and also some part of the xylem and the phloem. So it's basically when GSOB attacks a tree, it prevents it from moving nutrients and water up and down and from growing. So if you just take this bark out and you can see the galleries underneath, this is what it looks like. This is as the larvae eat, they start just meandering around under the bark and they leave these trails. So, and GSOB attacks here in California 3 species of oaks. We have the coast live oak and the California black oak. These are the favorite ones. They really like this too. But sometimes if they find canyon live oak, they might attack it as well. There's Engelmann oak that also can get attacked, especially in areas where it's very heavily infested, but it doesn't seem to be a species that gets particularly preferred or sought by this pest. All right, and to give you an idea of how this works, so we first had this infestation here in San Diego. We found it around 2008 was when all this mortality that was happening in San Diego County, on the oaks in San Diego County, finally got assigned to this pest, GSOB, gold spotted oak borer. But then from there, and we think it's been there since the 90s. That's based on what we've seen in the impact, right? It took a long time for anybody to realize what that oak mortality, that there was a generalized oak mortality and what was causing it. Because we know, like, oaks can die from so many causes. And in here, especially when we start having lots of year after year of drought, there's a lot of oaks that are declining because of that. So until they figure out, oh, there's this pest, oh, this is actually the cause of death of the pest, took several years. So we think it's been here since the 90s, probably came from Southeast Arizona on infested wood. And then from here, we started seeing different focuses of infestation all over Southern California. And in this case, what we know is that it's firewood from this area that's starting infested firewood that was moved to these other areas and started the new focuses of infestation. So really, the movement of infested firewood is one of our biggest issues regarding this pest. And I'm gonna, I think I have a slide a little bit later that talks a little bit more about that. But just to go about how GSOB, gets into the tree, we're gonna start here with the eggs. They lay their eggs in the bark, usually in the bark crevices. These are teeny, teeny, tiny. Honestly, I've been looking at trees and infested trees for years, and I've never seen the eggs. because they're so small. These eggs are laid between June and September, so we're talking about the summer. Out of those eggs come out this larvae. The larvae usually start small and they start growing as they feed on the bark. Then by the end of the summer, they became prepupa. They fold into, we call them the hairpin configuration, like they look like a hairpin that you put in your hair. They overwinter like that, and then when it starts getting warm again, the next spring, they pupate and they start coming out as adults. They take just a few weeks as a pupa and then come out as adults. And as they come out as adults, they chew this D-shaped exit holes to come out of the tree. It's a D-shaped exit hole. These are called flat head borers. So their head is flat, yet their stomachs are full of food, so they're round. So if you think about it, you're coming out with a flat head and a round stomach. You leave this exit hole that looks like a capital D. So this D-shaped exit hole. This whole thing takes 1 year. So you typically have one generation per year of this pest. Yeah.
From what time of year do they normally lay the eggs, and then when do the eggs hatch from that time?
The hatching the eggs takes like a few days or like a week, and they're so.
In the spring.
It starts in the spring. So this, from May to September, there's gonna be adults coming out. So there's many months in which the adults come out, and it takes maybe a week or so. They need to find a mate. They find a mate, they do their thing, they lay their eggs. So during all this time, they're gonna be laying eggs. And each egg takes about a week or so. It just really depends on the temperature, but it takes more or less that. And the egg hatches and the larvae goes inside the tree. So there's a big window of time in which we have beetles coming out of the tree, mating, laying eggs, and eggs going into the tree, which is basically from May till the end of, May to September. I was just thinking about it is reading here. From May to September, you have that emergent season, and the egg laying happens a few days after. It just depends how long it takes for each of them to find their mate, but yeah. So I went ahead of myself a little bit before when I was talking about the impact, right? But this is kind of showing the same idea. We have the beetles eating on the phloem. Again, that's the vascular system that brings sugars from the leaves to the rest of the tree. They're feeding on the cambium layer, so it stops new growth on the tree, and it's feeding on the xylem level, which impedes the movement of water from the bottom to the top. And so affecting all of that vascular system is what ends up killing the tree. So how do we know if a tree is infested? Well, one of the things we'll see, was there a hand? Yes.
I was just wondering, I know there's a lot of factors to this.
Yes.
After infestation, about how many years does it take to kill a typical oak tree?
It takes 3 to 4 years, could be 5. It just depends on how healthy the tree is. And actually, this is exactly where it goes, because this is a tree that's infested and it just looks normal. The crown is pretty full. It's just fine, right? And it takes many years, like a few years later, you start seeing some of the thinning of the canopy. And then eventually, 3 to 4 years later, you start seeing dieback. So it takes a long time, but during that time, that tree has these insects inside of them, and insects are coming out and infesting the surrounding trees.
Is your caption attacks? What is that?
Oh, this means that the beetles like to attack the trees that are 18 inches in diameter. So DBH is diameter at breast height. This is a slide that was for professionals. They just do But they just like trees that are mostly big, established trees. When we do surveys for GSOB, we kind of not even look at anything that is smaller than 10 or 8 inches in DBH. So we're talking about the diameter. So it's about like anything smaller than this, they usually don't attack. They like big trees, which is sad. Like they like the mature big trees that we like too. Yes.
How big of a problem is this? And is like the state or anybody pouring any resources to attack this thing? To me, it would be simple. Like if you just release like sterile males or something like that when they're
Yes.
That would help a lot.
So how big of a problem? A huge problem. We have more than 200,000 trees dying. So big problem. How easy it is to deal with it? Very hard, right? You have good ideas like, yes, we could release sterile males if that would be a way to do it. But that is not the solution for every pest. That works great for mosquitoes. That's a tactic that they're using. They're releasing sterile males. That works. But for GSOB, that is not a tactic that so far we've even been able to accomplish. So if we think about what I'm gonna go very, quickly through things that best management practices, things that you can do to manage GSOB, and that will give you an idea of what can be done. Biocontrol at this point, and I'm gonna address it now because you guys have been asking about it. So, what attacks GSOB? We see woodpeckers. They eat the pupa. They don't really make a dent in their population. It's just a thing that we can just see if there's woodpecker damage will tell us that that tree might have GSOB. That's all it's good for, unfortunately. Other natural enemies, there's parasitoid wasps. That's kind of being an entomologist, it's amazing. It's kind of having your own sci-fi movie happening. So parasitoid wasps, what they do is they lay their eggs on their target, like let's say on the adults or the larvae of this of GSOB, and then out of those eggs come larvae, and the larvae starts eating the prey. It's from the inside out, kind of like Alien. So it's very common, and it's very common to use those as biocontrol for insects. Yet the ones that we've found right now, there's a couple of species found here in California. One is from Europe. There's one from Arizona. Probably came also with infested wood. None of them so far have shown promise of being able to attack enough beetles that will make any dent in their population. So some of them, at most, they attack at 3% of the population, which is not enough to do any kind of control. But there's still hope. We are planning or want to work with people from Arizona and try to figure out, okay, what is eating GSOB over there? But then, as Chris said, that takes yet many years of research because you have to make sure, you have to first rear the beetles in the lab. The beetles live in oaks. Are we gonna plant huge oaks in the lab so we can have beetles inside of them? Like, it's really hard. So we have to sort of come up with ways to be able to rear these beetles who need a full trunk to rear them in a petri dish. That's a challenge that we're trying to work towards. Once you get to do that, you need to rear the natural enemy in the lab. And then, as Chris was saying, you need to do a lot of tests because you don't want to release another invasive. You don't want to release something that is going to go for native beetles, right? So it's there. It's a possibility. We want to explore it, but we don't have that yet. Yes.
I noticed trees declining when I moved to this area 6 or 7 years ago, and I thought it was sudden oak death. And there is some of that. How can we distinguish, and how much of a problem is sudden oak death compared to this?
Here in San Diego,
Yeah.
as far as I know, we don't have southern oak death in San Diego. It's a problem more like Northern California. So one of the main differences is that for southern oak death is caused by this it's a mold, it's a water mold. It's like such a weird organism, but basically the spores can swim in the water. And so the thing that will cause sudden oak death in your oaks is having too much moisture on the ground, which tends not to be the case of our natural oak woodlands. Yet, since a lot of you guys are here because you do have, well, maybe, hopefully, you have oaks in your homes, that is an issue that is very, very, very important with oaks. You proper irrigation of oaks or improper irrigation of oaks tends to be the main culprit of any kind of oak decline. It doesn't affect being attacked or no by GSOB, but it does affect the general health of the oak. So just I'm going off topic for a second, but if you're taking care of your oak, do not irrigate your oak. Don't do it. They're totally adapted to be grown in this area. I mean, I'm talking about a coastline oak, right? Like a native oak to this area. They're adapted to dry summers with no rain and to get all their moisture in the winters. If you do, sometimes you might want to give it a little bit extra. It's always like maybe one time during a very hot summer, let's say, or if the winter didn't rain, just do it once and do a very deep irrigation. So let the water soak deep, deep, deep. You just do it once, let it be. The frequent shallow irrigations that you get when you put your sprinklers for, you use it for your grasses, for your lawn, your other plants, that is no good for the oaks. The more moisture the oak, if it has stagnant moisture around the base of the tree, that is really bad. That could bring sudden oak death, but also root rot and other pathogens that attack the oak's roots. So make sure that you avoid, if you have, ideally you should not have other plants planted under the oaks because you need to give them space for their own roots to get their nutrients and the water, but just avoid just having plants there and watering those plants with frequent shallow irrigations because you're probably going to be affecting that oak. Yes.
Speaking about one deep watering per summer or per month?
Per summer, and you don't have to do it. It's just if you sort of want to, or you think it's like very, very dry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I just want to mention a key word, best management practices, and it's all about stewardship, which
Yes.
is the key word on whole landscapes. We go to the doctor for a review. We lube and tune our vehicle. We brush our teeth in the morning. That's stewardship. The name of the game is look at your trees and evaluate them. This boar, this gold spotted boar, is the shape of a capital D. You mentioned D, but it's
Yes.
a capital D because there are many, many boars throughout our environment that goes. And use a flashlight to identify the boar because they are small and sometimes even a magnifying glass helps.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll show you some other holes and what they look like as well in a few slides. Yes.
What about if you're planting seedlings? What about irrigation of seedlings?
That is different. Seedlings might need some, I mean, you can leave them, let them be, and a lot of them are gonna die just as they do in nature. Or you can provide supplemental irrigation for like 2-3 years and then let them be. That's when you do like that's how I know about restoration in open areas, that they would need a little bit more irrigation. Yeah. Yes.
My understanding is if you're gonna water an oak, then it has to be done on the tree, the outer edge of the the tree,
Yes,
not near the trunk.
absolutely.
Which would be more towards the natural rainfall, the way we get natural rainfall.
Exactly.
They do it very, very rarely.
That area where the trunk hits the ground, you should not irrigate that. You should not get water into that. That is the no area. That's where, if when you have that area being wet or, often wet, that is what sort of leads to root rots and all those kind of pests or diseases. All right, back to how to know if you have GSOB. Well, first you're gonna look how is the crown doing. That's one sign. If you have black oaks, they look slightly different, but basically what you will see in a black oak is smaller leaves, and they would not drop their leaves in the winter because black oaks are deciduous. But I think over here, I'm just gonna pass this because over here everyone has mostly coast live oaks, I'm assuming. The main thing is this D-shaped exit holes. And as the gentleman said, capital D, right? D. You can see D-shaped exit holes. They are small. Yes, using a flashlight helps a lot. You're gonna have to get close and personal with your oak. And actually, the flashlight is good for two things. It's to see better the holes, and it's to guide your gaze. We use them a lot when you survey oaks, and you have to think about, so basically if you have a quarter, the holes are about the size of the letters in a quarter. I have in here some cards. I would recommend you take some, and it has a punch out of the exit hole and about the size of that exit hole. So please take some with you. But the thing is, they are D-shaped, and sometimes they're a little bit misshapen, and it really takes a while to get a good eye to distinguish this from so many other things that attack oaks and not necessarily will kill the oak, right? And
So what do you do if you find that?
I'll tell you in a minute. But over here I can show basically all the other things that could be in the oak bark, and how that D-shaped exit hole, sometimes if the bark is a little bit rough, it could look a little bit more like other things. Definitely if it's oval and it doesn't have that straight edge, is not GSOB. But there's lots of things that can confuse us, and especially as the bark crumbles, it just it makes it a little bit hard. So don't be discouraged if it's hard for you to actually identify these D-shaped exit holes at once, because not all of them look textbook like some of the pictures I'm showing you.
How common is it for a tree to have multiple types of holes?
Super common. And especially if the tree is already with high decline. So a lot of these, you'll find them more often in dead wood, because they're from beetles that attack dead wood. But the GSOB attacks healthy trees, or not dead at least. But GSOB can come first, kill the tree, and then you have these other ones coming after. So it's not strange also to have a mix of GSOB and this one. So it's really fun to try to figure this out. Other things you can see is the galleries under the bark. So that's only if the tree, you're going to be removing the tree. Otherwise, I do not recommend you to chop into the tree to try to see these galleries, but that would be a telltale. And the woodpecker feeding on the trees, right? That we talked about, that is just something that could be GSOB, but not necessarily associated with it for sure. So we have all these other things. We can also have some staining in the bark, but all of these, if we see dieback, if we see woodpecker, maybe we see some staining in the bark, we should get close and try to see this capital D-shaped exit holes. Dieback doesn't necessarily mean you have GSOB, right? Staining doesn't mean you have GSOB. But D-shaped exit hole in an oak in California, so far there's no other thing that does that. So this is the symptom that we're gonna use, or the sign actually. So, and I do have a slide later to what to do when you find them. But I want to go very quickly through what are things that we can do once we find, or once, best management practices for GSOB. So our first thing is exclusion. We want to restrict the movement of firewood. So I did mention about how GSOB spread. And this is, so what we do when we research GSOB, we put them in this sort of treadmill. It's like glued to this wire, and then we just let them fly, and they fly in around for as much as they would until they get tired. Yes, better say exhausted. And so when we do that, they actually fly like a little bit less than a mile. They're really lousy flyers. And so really what they do on their own usually just go through to the oaks that are next to the infested oaks, just maybe a few oaks nearby. But we've seen in the map those jumps from San Diego to an infestation in Los Angeles County. So if they only fly about a mile, that doesn't seem possible, especially if we don't have GSOB in between. Hence, the firewood. With infested firewood, that's how they hop these long distances. And so if we think about managing a pest, the first thing you need to do is prevent the pests from getting there in the first place. I know in here, mostly you probably already have it, but you can also prevent this pest from coming somewhere else, to go in somewhere else. Or if you're buying, let's say you have your property and it doesn't have gold-spotted oak borer in it, be very wary about bringing firewood to that property. That's what we talk about. If you have to bring firewood, just try to bring local firewood, ideally from less than 5 miles away. If you can buy firewood that has been kiln dried, or debarked, or the firewood that you can buy at the grocery store is usually pest-free. That's fine, but be wary of those cheap firewood by the side of the road, because that person had an oak that died and decided, okay, well, at least I'm can make some money out of this. And then you find this cheap wood and you're like, yes, oh, that sounds like a deal. And that deal can be really bad for you.
So would they also be in the smaller branches that might be mulched and then transferred to mulch, or is it only in the bigger parts?
For the most part, in the bigger trunks. Anything smaller than 8 inches usually doesn't get, infested. Yeah.
It would seem that the spread would require transport of firewood that still has live beetles emerging from it.
Yes.
How long, if you were to cut firewood, how long does it have to stay on a property for that to complete? So it's 2 months.
Great question. 2 years. The life cycle takes 1 year. So 1 year is the very, very, very minimum. But we have seen that sometimes it takes 2 years to complete the life cycle. So to be safe, it has to be 2 years of staging before that firewood can be moved without any risks. Yeah.
Do they affect any of the trees besides?
Just oaks, and so far there's 3 species of oaks. But yeah, as I was saying, like something that about like 1 foot square piece of wood can just take 28 beetles out of there. So really, what looks cheap might not be cheap. And we have a lot of public campaign on what we call buy it where you burn it, don't move firewood, just try to create consciousness in people, awareness that they should not be moving firewood, neither to their location nor from your location to another location. So if you go camping or something, buy your firewood where you're staying. Yeah.
There's an element of money involved in here for the woodsmen that are transplanting our dead oaks chopped up in Malaysia into firewood, taking it to LA, Los Angeles. Absolute no-no in what they say. Buy it where you can burn it, But a cord of oak in LA right now, I got a quote recently, it was $875 a yard. So two yards of that in a pickup is a lot of my money for that entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, and we know in LA, in Green Valley, for example, we even found, the patient zero, if you want, like that person in the community say like, yeah, unknowingly he bought some wood, brought it to his cabin in Green, in in the LA, in the Angeles National Forest, and later on we went and we found evidence of D-shaped exit holes. A lot of people just don't know. You just think, oh, it's cheap, it's great, got a deal, yay. So yes, and because, as you say, people get a lot of money out of selling this wood, there's a lot of work that has to go into educating the consumer, right? You have to be an educated consumer because unfortunately they're not going to tell you that. Yeah.
There's also a lot of dead avocado wood around here. Really self-explanatory, but do GSOB only attack oaks or are they opportunistic?
GSOB only attack oaks, but invasive shadowborers, another pest that I work with, actually attacks avocado. So in general, this is not just for GSOB, it's for any pest. You just should not bring firewood from one place to another. You should be very wary about moving green waste and firewood, because that's how this kind of tree pests move around. Yeah. All right, so we got prevention. Then what? The next thing, I'm going to talk about removal of some trees. So we call them amplifier trees. So basically, when GSOB attacks an area, about 10% of the trees that get attacked, they get very heavily attacked. In those trees that get very heavily attacked, we call them amplifier trees. They usually have more than 25 of those exit holes, and they start showing symptoms of decline. Those trees contain between 60 and 90% of the beetles in that area. So when we think about integrated pest management, one of the things we can do is remove as much of the agent as we can. And so removing those amplifier trees, those heavily infested trees, would give us sort of a break. We're just reducing how many beetles are in that area trying to attack the surrounding trees. So usually those are trees that once they get to that stage, once they have more than 25 exit holes, and especially if they're starting to show symptoms of decline, they're not going to survive even if you treat them with pesticides. So the best thing you can do is act quickly, remove those amplifier trees, and you're just going to give all the trees in that area sort of like a respite. Yes?
Remove is a simple word, but you've got that wood layer. What do you mean by remove?
Well, the next one after this one. But yes, chop them down and then we'll see what are your options. What do you do with that? Yes. I have this one which is, okay, when are we going to remove or treat? Like if I want to save that tree, we're only going to try to treat any tree that is like high value, healthy tree. If the tree is already showing signs of decline and it has more than 25 exit holes, that is a good triage threshold. Some people start removing trees earlier, even more than 10 exit holes. And some people want to save the tree for longer. But keep in mind that if you try to keep the tree for longer and you don't succeed at controlling those beetles, there's beetles coming out of that tree that are going to be infesting the trees around. So, but yes, if the tree is in an area that, it's high traffic, it's where you park your car, or like those trees, when they start declining, their branches get brittle and can fall on people or on property. So you have to consider those things as well. So, as I said, the beetles can stay in downwood for up to 2 years. So GSOB usually lives within the bark, right under the bark. So of all this downwood that happens when we remove a tree, there's still larvae and pupae developing under that bark. So we have to manage that wood in order to be able to manage GSOB and not be the cause of the spread. So very quickly, options that we have for that. The simplest, more practical one is chipping. As long as the chips are smaller than 3 inches in diameter, that should get rid of all of the GSOB in that wood. What do you do with those chips? Usually the best thing to do is keep them in the same property. You spread them. Try not, when you spread them, don't do more than 3 inches to prevent any fire fuel buildup, right? So you spread it thin, especially if you're going to be removing several trees. That is the more straightforward way to make sure that that infested wood does not move GSOB to other locations. The chips, if you hire an arborist or something, they can take those chips to a composting facility where anything that gets composted, if it's done in a, correctly, which usually composting facility would do that, it just becomes pest free. But let's say you want to keep that wood. Well, you can season the wood. You have to leave it for 2 years, as we said. But now you keep the wood there. The beetles are going to come out of there and going to go to the surrounding trees. So ideally, you will be seasoning it, but contained. And that's when it gets tricky. You could use plastic tarp. It has to be at least 10 millimeters thick, and it has to be UV resistant, and it has to be super absolutely sealed. You could use a metallic mesh, which works a little bit better. Again, it has to be very thin mesh, and it has to be very well sealed, because what will happen is that the beetles are going to come out, and they're going to be trapped in here or in here. And eventually they're going to die because they don't have any food. So you have to make sure that they're not going to escape. And these guys are like Houdini. They're really good at escaping. But some guys have been doing this, and they were able to keep the wood from their tree for 2 years like this, and then use it as firewood, which was fine.
Is there any evidence that improperly maintained tree removal equipment can spread the beetle? And like chainsaws or any timbers that aren't cleaned properly?
Yeah, we don't have any studies for GSOB, but generally it's good practice to regularly clean those. I'll say GSOB specifically is not gonna stay in the sawdust that will usually accumulate. And I'll say, like, you have to be a very lazy keeper of your tools if you're leaving huge chunks of wood in it. It could happen, but usually that gets brushed away. Yeah.
I live on a street, which is common in cities where they have a street where they plant all one species, and then the next would have another kind, and so they think of a sort of a theme fence.
Yeah.
One of those absolutely gorgeous Chinese paper lantern trees, and my tree was sick. None of the other ones were. I had just moved in, and I noticed this thing. And then somebody came in, and the city came in and trimmed all of the trees, and they did not clean their blades between them, and every single tree died. And these things were absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
Because if it's something like a fungus, you have to clean between every single tree.
Absolutely.
And they
yes.
think, oh, that's too much. And I actually challenged that. I said, you're not clean. I came up to it. He says, you don't need to. Like, he knew everything. And I never got to talk to the guy again, because it was like 2 years later when all the trees were dead.
Right. And whoever contracted them, if they're not savvy enough, they will not link that death to the trimming.
Beautiful trees. They
Yes.
look like bonsais. They have these beautiful flowers and beautiful seed pods.
Right.
And that just disappeared. The whole street.
So when we're talking about GSOB, that would not be the case. But as you said, for any other disease, yes. So ideally, you would disinfect your tools in between trees. Now, and I can tell you, so if you want to do that, the way to do it, and especially if in your home, that's easy for you. You have the control. So you can either use Lysol spray. You can use, I like to use ethanol alcohol, 70% diluted, because it works better than the 90% or 90 something percent that comes from the drugstore, because then it runs better. You can also use bleach, like a 5% dilution of bleach, but it will rust your blade, so I would not recommend bleach. So alcohol, what I do is I have it in a spray bottle, And after I'm done, I just spray my tools, and I use sometimes chisels and stuff to take samples, and I always spray them. Now, for a company, I did talk, so when we work with, arborists and such, and we do trainings, and we're like, oh, you have to sanitize after every cut. And no one is going to do that, right? Because it's very expensive for them to spend that time doing it. But one thing that can be a nice compromise when you have your pruners, if they notice that one tree is showing any kind of signs of decline or that it could be sick, well, you're going to disinfect after that tree, or you're going to be pruning all the healthy trees without necessarily cleaning after every tree. And in another, and then you're going to prune the one that is looks like it's infested with something, and then you're going to disinfect in between. That's kind of a compromise that we found. But yeah, it's really hard, because we come up with really nice pest management practices, and then they told us that's impossible, we're not going to do that. So you have to find a way to compromise.
And I went out there and told him, don't cut this tree. If you do, he says, oh yeah. He was arrogant about it. Seeming like I have to say, he was a good arborist in the artistic sense, because he did one of the most beautiful
pruning
from a trimming.
Yeah, at least it didn't top the tree, which happens a lot too.
Yeah, but he didn't know anything about disease spreading.
Right. Yes.
How quickly can you, if you have a tree and you cut it down, can you burn the wood that's infected?
You can. The only thing is that usually you need to wait until the wood is dry for it to burn. And while you do that, the beetles are going to come out of it. One thing that you can do is you can debark it, because the beetles live in the bark. Again, it's time consuming, it's not cheap, but you can debark, and then the hardwood, that can be moved or stored. So then you just have to chip the bark, and then you can keep or sell the hardwood. Then that's pest free. Yeah.
I think there's a common thread in the audience here called love. I think we're here because we enjoy trees. We love this beautiful community. We've done it with woodlands all over the place. But the name of the game is contact a certified ISA arborist, International Society for Horticulture. We are trained, and be careful about these little plastic bags that you see on your driveway with a business card. I will prune your trees,
Absolutely.
That's
Always ask for the license number and go double check online, because it's very important. But on top of that, the other thing you can do, because you could have a certified arborist that hasn't been trained specifically on this pest. So if you have, and when I mention in a minute, I'm just going to mention some treatment options, and you need to have a licensed arborist to do that. You can always ask, are you familiar with gold-spotted oak borer or whatever other thing you just ask them to help you with, in test them a little bit. It's hard. It's as hard as like finding a good doctor, right? It's hard. There's a lot of doctors and they all have their degrees, yet some of them are better than others. Same thing with your tree doctors. So you have to sort of shop around. Don't go to just one, because it's going to say, oh, you're going to do this and I'm going to do all this like fertilization and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, no, grown trees in the landscape usually don't need any kind of fertilization. Like, if we're going to treat my trees, just tell me about this pest and that's it. So shop around, ask for verification. Yes.
It was a certified arborist that way.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
But what I wanted to ask is, I've seen that you have, it looks great, but some people feel like too much for them. Are there, insecticide, but that might also be like spraying the bark with an insecticide, that people who are not willing to do that they can do that instead?
If you're thinking about using it as firewood, I would not spray it with anything, because just think that then you're going to burn that and you're going to be breathing that. So anything that's going to be used for firewood is not recommended to be sprayed with anything. It just could be very dangerous for your health. Yeah. So I think that if you can't do any of these to keep it as firewood, usually the cheapest way is to get it chipped. Yeah. Okay.
Next slide.
Yes. Can we? Okay, let's do this and then.
I live near Live Oak Park. My trees are a continuation of the park. Mary has been over to my house and has identified some of my trees as having the gold spotted oak borer. That means it's in fall. And actually, the first time that I saw a gold spotted oak borer was about 6 years ago. I didn't know what it was, and I haven't seen one since. It landed right next to me, so I thought, oh, that's a pretty little bug, but that's exactly what it was. And we're here. It's affecting us. It's going to be even more so. If I have them, they're going to spread. And that doesn't mean that I'm the only one that has them. So this is very important.
Thank you. Yes, and the control depends on all of the trees, right? So it's good to have like a community-wide sort of awareness and management if you want. Like if you manage your tree, but you still get beetles coming from your neighbors.
Charlie's got probably 500, and he lives up in Rainbow Heights, and he has told me that he has them under his property too.
And I'm not too surprised based on where they are, right? Like what we know about the distribution, unfortunately. All right. Did you have a? Yes. Underneath, yes.
Under and over the tree.
Yes, under and over, and we put dirt around or something to keep it super sealed. Yes. All right. So let's talk about, let's say you have a healthy tree, a high value tree that you want to save, which is makes a lot of sense. So in those cases, you can think about chemical treatments with insecticides. Just keep in mind that we're going to be thinking about it as a preventative treatment. So if the tree is already infested and showing signs of decline, they're probably not going to respond well to that treatment, especially if it has more than 25 exit holes. But also think about the environmental cost that treating causes. And as I said, you need a licensed professional to do this application. Please don't go rogue and apply anything yourself, because the things that work, you cannot buy them at the store. And in order to avoid this environmental cost, someone with the right training has to do it. And again, we don't like the spray and pray, right? You don't do a treatment and then like, done. You gotta keep looking at that tree, right? Like our fellow gentleman here said, like you need to take care of it and constantly monitor your tree, see how is it reacting, is it getting better, is it getting worse? Like please just keep monitoring your trees. So very quickly, there's two kinds of insecticides you can use. You can use trunk sprays, which basically you spray an insecticide on the trunk, and once the beetles land on it or are coming out of the tree and they get in touch with that insecticide, they die. Or you can do trunk injections, which is basically like IV to a tree. You're injecting the insecticide in the tree, and then the tree is moving the insecticide as they move water. So both of them have pros and cons. Working, yeah. So if you do contact insecticides, you have to do it every year. You would do it at the beginning of the emergent season. So you want to apply those around April or maybe May. It's less expensive, but you're spraying. There could be drift. It does affect non-target organisms more than this other one. If you use systemic insecticide, you're gonna do it every 2 years, the last 2 years. It is more expensive, it takes more time, and every time you do it, you're gonna be drilling holes in the tree, or not you, the licensed pesticide applicator would do. And you're making a wound in the tree. You're making a wound in the tree where you're gonna be injecting that insecticide, and those wounds can get infested with some pathogens, and then you get another problem on top. So injecting is not like the panacea. It's another option. you're not going to be spraying pesticides around, but you have other risks, if you want, for your tree.
Wouldn't that kill the tree too?
Sorry?
If you're injecting insecticide into the tree itself, would that kill it?
No, the insecticide would not kill the tree. Right. Yeah.
How deep does the injection go?
It goes into the cambium, so it depends on how thick the bark of your particular tree is.
And there's a product called ACE caps, which are injectable capsules where it's drilled, it's compounded in there, and then takes its job to go up the cambium layer. And I just leave them in there, so there's no opening hole.
Right. Oh, with the capsules, yeah. Well, but I don't know if particularly don't know if the imamectin benzoate or the imidacloprid that are the two that have been tested to work come in those capsules. Actually, all I've seen them is coming in the liquid form that they need to be injected. But if there's capsules, that might be a better option. But you still do drilling, so it's still not it's still not risk-free. That's what I'm trying to say. And because it depends on the tree to bring it up, the tree has to be somewhat irrigated or have like water, available to bring that up. So again, we want to, if we're doing any kind of insecticide systemic, we want to do it in spring because that's when the trees are moving water. If it's too hot, the trees are not moving water, they're closing their stomata, they're just sort of like holding in there because it's too hot. And if it's too cold, same, they're not moving water. So usually when you do systemics, you do it in the spring or the fall, but in this case, you want to do it in the spring before the beetles are laying their eggs and the larvae starts eating. So you want that insecticide to be in the tree before the larvae starts feeding. So when they do, they die, basically. Okay, we've got two.
I had a point about the infestation in terms of drilling. It's like the arborists using a different arborists. Other ones don't disinfect their tools. And I do.
Absolutely.
I use a Jet and the Jet products, and it works. And the secondary thing that you can apply is a hormone, not a growth regulator, but a phosphojet that'll help the compartmentalization of it and the healing, and that tends to get away from the spotting and
for those of you with a license, you can also use Bacillus subtilis, which is a biological fungicide, and spray those wounds with it just to prevent it. Right. But I wasn't including all, kind of like I do that for the professional trainings. Yes.
I like to point out the fact that you're putting it as a negative about the drilling, but
yes.
Also it can be mitigated with also using sterilization as well. So
for sure. Yes. So both of them have good and bad, right? And so it's kind of a decision of what. But yes, of course. And if it's done correctly, it's usually fine.
And I always say the difference is look at what the guys wear when spraying and look at what the guys wearing when he's doing injecting, and that's the reality of it because that's what's going into the environment.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Again, important to have someone licensed and experienced because it's not that it's like a doctor, right? You want your tree doctor to be someone who has experience that knows how to do things. Do you have a quick question?
I have with regards to your contact insecticides.
Yeah.
Is that an insecticide that kills an insect on contact?
Yes.
Because the staff put on a GSOB blitz earlier this year in June, and there was an arborist there, arborist who had been doing a lot of research since GSOB began, and he was doing a kind of barrier spray, which he said had been very effective. So it basically stops insects from leaving or getting in. You have to do it once a year, at least. And in terms of cost, it seems sort of manageable. It was around about $40 a tree if you have a growth.
Yeah.
Like just one tree, it's a lot more than that.
I wonder if it's the same or not, but a lot of the times contact insecticide and barrier insecticide are synonyms.
Okay. Yeah.
So it prevents them because it kills them. Okay. Yes. So it's the same thing. Yes, it's way cheaper. So if you are treating 1 or 2 trees, maybe this is a good option. If you're treating a whole grove, this is not doable, right? But yet, if you have any kind of body of water, you cannot do the spray, unfortunately. Like the chemicals that go for the chemicals used for contact insecticides that work with GSOB, if they go into bodies of water, they're very detrimental to aquatic organisms. So usually, at least 100 feet from a body of water, I don't use, 100 feet of buffer around a body of water, I don't use it. Again, those are things that a licensed professional that is good should know. That's why I insist on getting a professional to do it. We're gonna move through this and go to the last thing. So you think you found GSOB, right? You saw something. What are you gonna do? First, put pictures with something for scale. We can take a picture with a finger, but my finger and your finger might be a slightly different size. So it's not really, like, it's not telling me much about the size of that hole. This is much better because everyone has a quarter around, and this is like much better because it has a ruler. And also you're using the things that we're providing, but it just, any ruler will work. So ideally you will take a good picture of the sign that you found, and then you can share it with us. So things that you collect on top of that is information of, the tree species, how big it is, how many of those D-shaped exit holes did you see? Where is that tree? And then you can report it in our website, gsob.org. So this website in here, you can find a lot of information. You can find training announcements. You can find information about the blitz that we were mentioning, so where we train volunteers to survey for GSOB. But you can also report your trees. So basically this is, I think I have GSOB, I'm just not 100% sure, I would like a confirmation. You fill out that report, it's gonna ask for those pictures, so make sure you take those pictures, and that report goes to a group of people from the University of California, CAL FIRE, the RCDs. Like, we just look at that and send it to whoever is closer. So we do a first screening. Does that look like possibly GSOB? And if it does, we usually send it to any collaborator that is in the area, and we can go and double check for you and give you a, yeah, yes it is, not it's not. So think about that. So go spotted or water or GSOB .org, and all of our materials have that address to go to report, and then we'll get it. And we'll put you in touch with someone that can help you confirm at least that that's GSOB. And so take home message, we want to monitor trees. We want to report any suspected trees. This is an area that is infested, so I'm not too surprised if we do find it in here. Prioritize prevention, don't move firewood, be responsible about how you manage the green waste that's infested that comes from your property. Think about preventative treatments. They only work for high value, healthy trees. And consider removing those amplifier trees, those heavily infested trees, because that can help a lot just managing the GSOB in the whole area. And this is my contact if you have any other questions. And if you're bored and you want to do a quick survey, just let me know how this went. I'll appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. And we've done questions in the wild, so maybe if you want to do 1 or 2 more, but then I figure you guys are hungry. Yeah, there's 2 people, so.
Another element to look for on your mark is frass. And frass is the drilling, like sawdust, that they exit out. And so that's an indicator that I have used.
I will say yes, but it's mostly related to other pests, because the Frass is how a scientist would like to say insect poop, but it just doesn't sound very scientific-y, so we say frass, mixed with boring dust, right? And so frass is very common with many other borers. In the case of GSOB, GSOB just opens that and leaves. And so there's no opportunity for it to poop and get that coming down. But if you see frass, it could be signs of other pests. Invasive shellhoppers do frass, small holes with a little frass. And the other thing, if you see frass that is reddish in kind of, it looks like ground coffee, if you want, that is the clear-winged moth. It's also called a sycamore borer, even though it also attacks other species like oaks. So if you have that, the bark is going to start looking kind of not very nice, and it makes a lot of holes as well. And that frass, which is not GSOB, so is the moth. But it could make it confusing because it makes holes, and maybe some of those holes might look a little bit D-shaped. So be wary of those reddish, dark red, kind of coffee ground or ground coffee frass. That's not GSOB, that's a clear-winged moth, and it's actually not a pest of concern. It's mostly just aesthetic. So if you have that, just let it be.
Does that look like ash also? Because I think that's what
I don't know if the sycamore borer attacks ashes, but sure, there's other species that do, yes.
If there's an infested tree that survives a wildfire, what effects does the wildfire have on the beetle infestation?
It's a great question. So actually, there's a whole swath of research on that. It's super exciting. My colleague Jolene Tam, right now she's a student at UC Riverside, but she's also she's a natural resources manager for the La Jolla Band of Luiseno Indians, and she's using these cultural practices for cultural burnings and trying to see if that can be used to manage GSOB. So far, what she knows is that if the bark gets nicely scorched, it really reduces the number of GSOB in there. But it's really hard to do research on trying to burn areas because we have so much limitations of that, but it's really exciting. Yes. So there is something there. We still don't know exactly how we can totally harness that for good.
Last question. It was just a time like this one. Does she know, or does maybe know if it's the scorching or the heat? Because since this was in Arizona, and it's not a problem, and when the heat is the fact that it makes it less.
It's more the fact that it's been scorched. A really good, easy to access example of this is at Vail Lake. You guys remember 2004, there was the Eagle Fire, Vail Lake. It was like May-ish. You can literally look at trees there's a tree by Jim that has a bunch of GSOB holes in it that wasn't scorched. And there's a tree by her that is scorched and has no GSOB holes in it.
Yeah, for the heat to be, it has to be at 60 Celsius for 60 minutes. That never happens with a fire passing. So yes, the indication is there's probably the scorching, but you just don't know yet what it is about it. Yes, the problem is that if you heat the vascular system of the tree at 60 Celsius for 60 minutes, you will kill it. So yeah, I mean, you won't have the GSOB anymore, you won't have tree anymore either. Yeah, and we can continue this conversation one-on-one if you guys want.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.